Just remember, folks, I'm actually going to watch where we're going, and I will be talking to my right and left while we go around town. Let me take a moment here, properly introduce you to the big guys out in front. After all, they're doing all the hard work for us today. Right-hand side of the coach up here, his name is Champ. He's a Shire draft horse. They're British. His partner over here on the left, that's Sam. Sam is a Percheron draft horse. He's French. Probably going to hear me talking to Champ and Sam a little bit while we're out on the tour. Now, y'all just sit back and relax while we head back over 140 years. Sam, Champ, step up. Let's get to work. We're headed back when Tombstone was nothing but a silver mining town. Became a city 1879, and before we were 3 years old, had two major fires. On the left, on that corner, today the world-famous Crystal Palace. Built the year we became a city, the Golden Eagle Brewery. Surviving the fire of 1881 and burned in the fire of 82. Got rebuilt in less than a month and been the Crystal Palace since June of 1882. Now keep it in mind while I tell you about the ambush of Virgil. Left again, the Oriental Saloon where the Earp brothers controlled the barrow tables. And on the right there's the branding iron. That was the single-story Bucket of Blood Saloon. Well, it happened on the night of December 28, 1881. Couple of months after the gunfight, Marshal Virgil come out of the Oriental to make his nightly rounds. He was headed for the brewery. Shots rang out from above the Bucket of Blood. Couple of those actually hit him in the back of his left shoulder, and he lost use of the arm the rest of his life. Never quit being a lawman. Virgil died at the age of 62, had the nickname the One-Armed Law Dog in 1905. Wyatt? That man spent the last 10 years of his life working for film companies in Hollywood. Died at the age of 81 in 1929. On the right now, that's a Birdcage Theater. It is the most authentic and most haunted museum in town. Well, they had their grand opening a week before the ambush of Virgil, 21st of December, 1881, and operated straight through to 1889. Why, they never even bothered closing the doors. They had 23 killings happen inside the birdcage. And the world's longest running poker game went on right down in that basement. Oh, it did not matter one bit. It cost $1,000 to buy into that game. And that's right at 30 grand a day. Now, it was documented to have had minimum of 4 men around that table. 8 years, 5 months, and 3 days non-stop. Every eye roller played in that game, there was an estimated $10 million changed hands. The table's still set up down in the basement. Like everything else inside the birdcage, all of it came from right here in Tombstone back during our heyday. From the books all the way down to our horse-drawn hearse called the Black Mariah. Now on the right's a mercantile store. That was the Arcadia Saloon. Site of our first fire, June 1881. Happened after a couple of brilliant bartenders checked the sour barrel of whiskey, and one of those boys had a lit cigar. 66 buildings burned. Now to right, back behind the Crystal Palace, well, there's a Tombstone epitaph. It was late in the year 1879 when our first elected mayor, an Indian Affairs agent by the name of John P. Plum, got to town. Told the folks here there's no Tombstone complete without his epitaph. May 1st, 1880 founded that paper, which is still in print. On the right now is Red Buffalo. That was Campbell and Hatch Billiards. In their March 18th, 1882, Morgan's playing a game. Outlaw shot through the back door, assassinating Morgan, and the Earps left town for good 2 days later. Now out the right up over that fence is Shefflin's Hall on the corner of 4th and Fremont. That's where Wyatt met Josie. On the right on this corner is Arlene's. This is Haffer's Liquor Store. This is where the Earps pick up Holiday on the way to the gunfight. They don't go down to the OK Corral like we are. No, they turn right, go over that block to Fremont. Today, Highway 80. 17 years, and they still won't let me drive horses on the highway. Well, the Earps got to that corner. They turned left and went to the alley, and I'll tell you more about that after the old-time photos on the right. And the wine tasting room was the Can Restaurant, owned and operated by a Chinese fella, humanitarian by the name of Quan Ki. That man was so respected in this town, he died in Douglas. They buried him in Bisbee. 3,000 folks got together and brought him back. He's in Boot Hill. On the right's the OK Corral. That is not where the gunfight happened. But out to right, back of the park, middle of that wall, there's a telephone pole. It's the opposite side of the wall, folks. That's where those 5 cowboys were in that 15-foot wide alleyway. They had the Earps and knockout on Fremont. Well, 2:30 in the afternoon, there was 30 seconds worth of gunfire. Now, in the end, Ike Clanton and Billy Claiborne survived by running away. Billy Clanton's dead in the alley. Tom and Frank McLaury died a block to the right by the stop sign. Virgil, Morgan, and Holiday are wounded. Wyatt walked away without a scratch. Newspapers called it the gun battle on Fremont. And on the left, the Four Deuces Saloon. That was the home of Addie Borland. She is the Earps eyewitness. Building stood across Fremont from the alley till they moved it here in '92. And left again, the red and black one. That was the home of China Mary. And welcome to Tombstone's Chinatown, folks. Oh, it is both sides of the coach here. We had 300 registered Chinese living in these 2 blocks back during our heyday. Every one of them under China Mary's watchful eye. Woman was a member of the Tong, the Chinese syndicate. She ran Chinatown. If you were Chinese and wanted to work here, you had to pay her off to get the job and pay her every week you worked. She operated the opium trade and died wealthy. China Mary's in Boot Hill. Now take a look out the right, 16 miles out there. Well, those are the Dragoon Mountains. And that's where the Apache war chief Cochise had his stronghold. That was 1862 all the way up until 1874. Cochise and only 27 of his warriors from the Chiricahua band of Apache. Well, they held the entire 3rd Cavalry from Fort Huachuca, which is 16 miles south of here, at bay up in those mountains. Put almost 100 soldiers into the ground, never losing a warrior. Lots of stories told how it ended. I believe he escaped with his men to the Chiricahua Mountains where they documented his death. Man was so revered they brought him back. Cochise buried out there in a grave no white man will ever find. Now out the right and across the street there's a big brown building on the corner past those trees. That's where the home of Virgil stood. Till we lost it in a fire, and that was back in 1996. You cross Fremont, right there on that corner at first. Wyatt's home is still standing. There is a 9-foot bronze statue of Wyatt in his yard. You'll find it on the highway pretty easy. Holiday never owned property save on a poker table. And when he left out here with Kate, well, they made it all the way to Prescott and parted ways. Doc going on to Glenwood Springs, Colorado, at the age of 36, dying there 1887. Now on the left, that tan building, it belonged to another lawman. Come out of San Antonio, Texas, John Slaughter. 5'2", size 5 cowboy boots still made that man sheriff multiple times. Oh, now don't go running. If you do, you ain't gonna come back. Just a boot, saddle, hat, and gun belt to prove he got his man. Now on the right, so oh my God, good fellow, keep him in mind while I tell you about the chains on top of that rock wall. You're gonna see the wear on them. Well, these are the original drag chains, come off the very first set of 9-ton ore carts that operated out of Tombstone. Those carts always came in sets of 3. Those got here 1877. There were a whole bunch more just like them showed up shortly thereafter. Had more than 25 mines open up in these hills to our right before we became a city. And none of that ore got processed here. We haven't got that kind of water. No, they brought in those 9-ton carts, hauled all of it down to the San Pedro River. The house belonged to Dr. George Emery, Goodfellow, physician, surgeon, and gunshot specialist. 25 in 1880, not the 60 Hollywood made him look. After working on everybody in that gun that long 3 months, they made him county coroner as well. Now on the right between stop sign and fence there was a telegraph pole and our only lynching. Strung up John Heath there, he was an outlaw, lived right here in town. End of November 1883, John took a trip to Bisbee. Found a store with an awful lot of cash on hand. Getting ready to rob the place, somebody recognized him, so he come back. He had 4 of his friends go rob the store. He waited, led the posse in the wrong direction, and the 4 of them shot and killed everybody. It's called the Bisbee Massacre. Didn't even take 2 hours. Posse arrested John. He gave up his friends. Next day, everybody's locked up in the courthouse on the right. And out to right up over that brick wall, the gallows. Yeah, his 4 buddies hung, but not John. Oh, he wasn't part of any of that gunfire. They gave him 20 years hard labor in Yuma and locked him up in the courthouse. The next day, Tombstone busted him out, drug him down to that pole, and strung him up by hand. Took that man more than 20 minutes just to die. C.S. Fly got a picture of it, which is hanging in the courthouse right next to his death certificate. But our county coroner just happened to be in that lynch mob. He showed he had a sense of humor when Goodfellow wrote down that John Heath had died of emphysema of the lungs, possibly caused by high altitude or strangulation. On the left, home Allen English. That stained glass on his front porch is the original glass. Now, that came from Paris, France. It got here 1882, and even with a 7.2 earthquake here August 1887, glass remains unbroken today. Now, let me tell you about our founder, Mr. Edward Lawrence Shefflin. Shefflin all got named for him. Well, Ed was a scout for that 3rd camp down on Fort Huachuca for a couple of years. Told the Army in 75 he was coming here to Prospect. They looked at him and said, Ed, when you lose your mind, you already know about them hostile Apaches in the hills. You messing around up there, you're only going to find the Tombstone. It was 1876 when he found the $85 million worth of silver. 77 opened our first mine, called it the Tombstone for them naysayers on the port. Well, 2 years later, got 2,000 folk living here that incorporated as a city and took the name of the first mine. And out to right, Tombstone City Library, that was actually built in 1903. It is our railway depot. Southern Pacific operated here till 1959. And on the right now, that's a Rose Bush Museum. The rose is in that backyard. Was 1884 when a young Scottish newlywed planted that 6-inch cutting of the White Lady Banks rose. And it went into the Ripley's Believe It or Not book back in 1935. Guinness Book of World Records in 1945. Remains in both those books today. It blooms every April. On the left, Chamber of Commerce Visitor Center on the corner. This is our first adobe building in town. Now, a gentleman by the name of Pi Allen helped design and build it. And Allen Street, that we're turning back onto, got named for him. Well, our visitor center, as well as Shefflin's Hall, and that will be a block to our left after this corner. Both were untouched by the major fires. Second fire happened after the Earps left town for good. It was May 25th of 1882. That's the day 100 businesses burned. One of them on the left, other side of that fence is where the Cosmopolitan Hotel stood. Had 2 stories and 80 rooms. It's where they put the Earps and Holiday under house arrest during the inquest over that gun battle off Fremont. Addie Borland's testimony, and they were found not responsible, which is a lot different than not guilty. On the right, Big Nose Gate Saloon, the J.L. Silver Company. Those 7 arches are all that's left of the Grand Hotel where the Earps stayed when they got to town. As for Big Nose Gate, well, now Doc's girlfriend didn't have all that big a nose. She just didn't know how to keep that thing out of everybody else's business. And you'll find her buried up in Prescott. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed that tour around.